Hello everybody and welcome back to another exciting edition of Boyographic, the show in which I, Matt the Gameboy, talk you through the highs and lows of the Gameboy library, one cart at a time. This week we're looking at a game you've probably overlooked. It's Bill and Ted's excellent Game Boy adventure, A Bogus Journey. When you've been creating YouTube videos for a while, you start to get some idea in your head of certain milestones. I knew what I wanted to do for my first video, my 50th, and I even have some ideas for future videos. However, one number has always been reserved in my head for one particular video game.
69, dudes!
Yep, for that one reason, 69 could not be anything else but Bill and Ted's excellent Game Boy adventure, A Bogus Journey. And yes, that is the full title. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's a licensed game with the infamous rainbow of LJN on its cover. But don't be afraid, dear viewer, it's not as bad as you'd think. Developed by Beam Software, this Bill and Ted title sees you travel through a variety of worlds seen in both of the titular duo's movies. And despite it being released alongside a slew of other games documenting the adventures of the Wyld Stallyns, has no relation to any of them. You see, while most Bill and Ted games fall into the great 90s pigeonhole of adventure games, the Game Boy title is actually a single-screen puzzle platformer that for the most part feels pretty arcadey. The story is admittedly basic, with Dino Molos, the bad guy from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, stealing special orbs that he's turned into time fragments, and has naturally scattered these across time and space, leaving our heroes no choice but to get them back. As you might have guessed, you play as Bill S. Preston Esquire and Ted Theodore Logan across the game's 50 stages, not by means of a character select, but alternating between the two depending on which particular stage you're on. Each set of stages is themed around a particular time, place or period, such as San Dimas Mall, 1 billion BC, and the Abyss, which is clearly hell. But to be honest, other than the title card and some slight variation in sprite behaviour and aesthetics, you'd probably have never realised, as the visuals in Bill and Ted are basic at best. Sure, there's a little bit of likeness to the characters of Bill and Ted between stages, which, despite this being a movie game, look awfully close to the cartoon versions of the characters, but still doesn't change the fact the in-game sprites and environments feel like a budget title at best. But as we've seen before, basic visuals do not mean bad game, especially when you consider how basic the graphics are of the game that this one is most likely taking its cues from. Which game is that? Why, none other than everybody's favourite ZX Spectrum title, Manic Miner. Everything from how the time fragments flicker, the way the platforms crumble, and even needing to reach the exit once the time fragments are collected, all harken back to Matt Smith's classic title. So now the cat's out of the bag on the game's originality, how does it play? Well, surprisingly very well. Like Manic Miner, the gameplay takes place across a single screen, where the player must platform and solve puzzles to collect all of the game's time fragments, before escaping via the telephone box. Pretty straightforward, right? But when you consider how quickly the game ramps up its difficulty, you'd be surprised at how Bill and Ted takes the concept of Manic Miner and really plays with the premise. There are also some pretty nice power-ups to assist you on your journey, including a balloon to float to the top of the screen, an invincibility item, and even one that slows down enemies. Unfortunately, none of them are shaped like guitars. But by stage 5, the gameplay can seem almost unfair at times, as there's a lot of the learn by dying school of game design at work here. Collecting certain time fragments make platforms disappear in some stages, or reveal them in others, meaning a long leap for an item can be rewarded in some instances, while collecting the obvious first fragment in others results in instant death. Combine this with the one-hit kills of most of the enemies, some of which even chase you around the screen or fire projectiles, a little bit of tricky platforming, as well as some tight timing on gates opening and closing, and you'll see that Bill and Ted is a surprisingly challenging title. The game's time limit also plays more of a factor in the later stages and can be a real pain at times, where meddling enemies and carefully considered collecting can cost you dearly. When you think about it, it's no wonder that the game can become frustrating if played through in one sitting. So despite easily being able to get extra lives from the game by reaching 5,000 points, the folks at Beam were generous enough to offer a password system to the players to put the game down and pick it up where they left off at their convenience. The interface for this password system, of course, is, you guessed it, based around the Circuits of Time directory from the movie. Of course, every password starts with 555 like all good fake American phone numbers, but I just wish you didn't have to type it every single time. If you're a sadist like myself and want to try beating it without the help of passwords, the game does offer 3 continues on top of its generous 8 lives per credit. Apart from the game's challenging gameplay, however, there's really not a lot to Bill & Ted. With such basic visuals, you could hope the Beam would at least compensate the player with some decent audio delights, but like most of Beam's output on the Game Boy, the score too falls short of what you'd expect from even the most basic of games. It's just the same one tune playing throughout the entire title. And as this is a game where you're going to replay the same levels again and again and again, the fact there's no change up in the tunes is enough to drive a player insane. Fortunately, this can be turned off in the main menu if you're getting really grated by it. There's also a 2-player option in the game, but other than offering a distraction for a pair of kids on a long car ride, isn't really worth the time or energy. At its heart, Bill & Ted is a pretty average Game Boy title, but one that by no means deserves the look of disdain you've probably given the loose cart gathering dust in your local retro store. As despite the LJN rainbow shining out predominantly on the cover, Bill & Ted isn't all that bad. If you like Manic Miner or a challenge, this game could be just up your alley. Its tougher levels really do feel rewarding, even if the difficulty can spike in odd places. But at its heart, it's a solid puzzle platformer that with a lick of paint, some more budget to the game's composer, and maybe just a little bit more of what makes Bill & Ted great. Not only would the Wyld Stallyns not flunk most heinously, but maybe snag themselves some historical babes, and maybe, just maybe, even Eddie Van Halen. And that brings us to the end of another Boyographic, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please subscribe to the channel and share it with others you think may be interested, because that's how it gets around. If you did enjoy the videos and this is your first time here, why not check out some more about Boyographic videos, where I look at the highs and lows of the Game Boy library, one cart at a time. You can also check out some more Boy Curious videos, where I look at bootlegs and oddities for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, as well as some All the Glory videos, where I play through a game, cutting out all the deaths, leaving you with none of the faff, but all of the glory. You can also find me on Twitter at Gameboy and Facebook and Instagram at facebook.com/Gameboy and Instagram at the same place. Until next week, Game Boys and girls, it's goodbye from me. Game on.